Hi students, welcome back to this video. In this video, I will be giving you some sample question to practice for the test on quadratic equation and functions on November 10th. Okay guys, this is the first question. In this question, you're supposed to find the roots of this quadratic equation. Once more, I'm going to reiterate this is a quadratic equation because, first of all, it's equal to 0. Second of all, the biggest power is 2, so it is a quadratic. Okay? So, whenever you want to solve a quadratic equation, you have few options. If the question doesn't specify which solution or which method to solve, you can use the one which is like the most straightforward one. So here, if you take a look at this quadratic equation, you would see that x squared term is here, the x term is here, but the constant is missing. So I can either use the factorization or the formula. I will try to use both methods because right now we're just trying to explore different methods and see which one is more effective. So if I want to start with factorization, I can factorize the x. So I have 3x plus 2, which would be equal to 0. Remember, last time or maybe a few sessions ago, I talked to you about this fact in math that if you have a few brackets multiplied together and the answer is 0, it means any of these could be a potential 0. Okay? So, which means x is either 0 or 3x plus 2 is 0. So, from the first one, you can directly say x equal to 0 is one of the roots. And from the second one, if you solve it, you will get x equal negative 2 over 3. So you will end up with two roots, 0 and negative 2 over 3. Okay? These are your two roots, and this is what you expected because it's a quadratic and you expect two roots or two solutions. Okay, this is the first method. And in this method, I solved it by the method I used was factorization. Now let's use another method. So method 1 was factorization. Method 2, I'm going to use the quadratic formula to find the solution. This is the most easiest. Most of the time, this is the best solution you can get. If you want to use this formula, remember this is the quadratic formula. Remember, this is the formula you would need: b squared minus 4ac divided by 2 times a. And in here, a, b, c are the coefficient. A, it's always the coefficient of the x squared. B is the coefficient of x. And c is your constant. So the first thing you need to do is to rearrange, okay, your function or equation. That means you have to write from the biggest power to the lowest power. And here, it's already arranged, so you have x squared and then x. So let's substitute. The a is 3, b is 2, c is 0. And if I want to substitute in here to get the roots, negative b, it's negative 2 plus and minus. B squared is 4 minus 4 times a. C is 0. 2 times a, it's 2 times 3. So the answer, if I simplify it, would be negative 2 plus and minus 4. Negative 4 times 3, it's negative 12 times 0, it's 0. So the answer is 0 and then over 6. You know that the square root of 4 is 2. So your answers, one of your answers, it's negative 2 plus 2 divided by 6. The other answer is negative 2 divided by 6, right? From here, the answer is 0 over 6, which the final answer is 0. From the other one would be negative 4 over 6, which after simplification, it's negative 2 over 3. Very good example. As you can see in this example, no matter what method you use, you get exactly the same answers. You get exactly the same answer no matter what method you use. See, 0, negative 2 over 3. Again here, negative 2 over 3 and 0. Okay? So these are the two roots. But we are not done yet. When we do an equation, we just want to make sure that our answers are correct. Okay? We just want to have a peace of mind, right? And we want to make sure, okay, we're done with this question, we can move forward. So what I will suggest you, whenever you have such a question of finding the roots or solution, always test your answers. Test, okay? If you want to test, you have to plug in the two roots. Okay, so plug in x equal to 0 and see if both sides are equal. If I plug in x is equal to 0 in this equation, you will see that 3 times 0, it's 0, plus 2 times 0, it's also 0. 0 plus 0, it's equal to 0. So x equal to 0, it's definitely the correct answer. Now let's test the other one. Plug in negative 2 over 3, right? For this one, what I'll do is, now let's test the other one. So we have 3 times negative 2 over 3 to the power 2, which is 4 over 9, plus, okay, 2 times negative 2 over 3, and this must be equal to 0. If the two sides do not equate one another, that means the answer we got, it's not the correct one. But let's see. So 3, 9 can be simplified. So the answer is 4 over 3 plus, here I have 2 times negative 2, negative 4 over 3. So as you can see, both sides is equal to 0. So your second root is also the correct answer. And then you can see again, let's do a recap. No matter what method you use, your answer must be always the same. And remember, after getting your roots, test your roots to make sure they are the correct ones. Now let's move on to the next question. In this question, we are supposed to find the roots of this equation. 2x squared minus 3x plus 1, it's equal to 0. Okay, so what I suggest here, because this doesn't sound like an easy factorization job, so what I suggest you to do here is to use the formula. First thing first, you have to make sure it is in order from the biggest power to the constant. So we have power 2, power 1, and then the constant. Okay, now the next step is identifying the A, B, C. So the A here is 2, B it's negative 3, C is 1. Okay, so you found A, B, C. Now you have, okay, for this one, what I'll suggest you, it doesn't look like an easy factorization one. So what I suggest you is to use the quadratic formula. First, we identify the A, B, C. A being 2, C is negative, B is negative 3, and C is 1. And this is the formula, okay, that we're going to use to find roots. Now, the next step, it's simply substituting A, B, C. So, negative B would be plus 3, plus and minus, B squared is 9, minus 4 times AC, okay? So, if you find the two roots, one of them after simplification ends up at 1, the other one ends up at a half. Remember, we are not done yet. We want to test and make sure we are good. So first of all, we plug in the first one, which is x equal 1. So on this side, we have 2x squared minus 3x plus 1 must be equal to 0. So I plug in x as 1, so that would be 2 minus 3 times 1 plus 1. Is it 0 or not? 2 minus 3 plus 1 is equal to 0. So that's your correct answer. The second one is to plug in half. X equal to half. So 2 times 0.5 to the power 2 minus 3 times 0.5 plus 1 is it 0 or not? So 0.5 to the power 2 it's 0.25 times 2 it's 0.5 minus 1.5 plus 1. So this would be equal to 0 because 1.5 minus 1.5, yes, it is 0. Okay, so the second one, it's also the correct answer. That means both of the solutions we got are correct. Okay, the next question is x squared minus 3x equals to 18. And then you're supposed to solve it. Again, the question doesn't specify any method. And in this case, if it doesn't specify it's up to you which method to use. But first thing first, whenever you want to solve an equation, just bring everything to one side, okay? Make sure everything is brought to one side and then it is equal to 0. The other side is equal to 0. Then you can use any method, okay? So what I always prefer, personally, I always prefer to use the quadratic formula. As I just mentioned, when you want to use the quadratic formula, you have to identify A, B, C. A is 1, B it's negative 3, C is negative 18. So you have A, B, C. Next step is just to substitute. Negative B is plus 3 plus and minus B squared, which is 9 minus 4 times A, C, negative 18, right? 2 times A on the denominator. Now let's simplify. Plus 3 plus and minus. So 9 plus 72, it's 81. The square root of 81 is 9 over 2. So your two solutions will be x1 would be 3 plus 9 divided by 2. Your other solution would be 3 minus 1 divided by 2. So from here, your answer is 6. From here, it's negative 3. Okay? Now, let's use, this is what method? Quadratic. Correct. Quadratic formula. Perfect. Now let's try to use factorization method. If I want to use the factorization method, right, I'm looking for two numbers which I add them together. If I add them together, it will be negative 3. And if I multiply the same two, I would get negative 18. I know by experience it would be negative 6 and 3. And the same applies to you guys. If you want to find it really quick, you have to do lots of practice. So let's try it. These two added together, negative 3 multiplied negative 18, right? So remember, if I want to factorize it, it would be x plus 6, x negative 6, sorry, x plus 3 equal to 0. Again, this is a fact in mathematics. When brackets are multiplied together and then it is the product is equal to 0. That means any of those brackets could be a potential answer. So from here, you could say x minus 6 could be a potential answer. The other one is x plus 3 is equal to 0. So from here, the first one gives you x equal to 6. The second one gives you x equal to negative 3. Awesome. As you can see here at this point, compare the answers you got from the two different methods. Here you've got 6, here you've got 6, here you've got negative 3, again negative 3. Okay? But I still prefer to check my answer, okay, to test my answer. So first I plug in x is equal to 6 and see if the both sides are equal, okay? So here I will just substitute in the original equation. So x squared is 36 minus 3 times 6 must be equal to 18. If it's equal to 18, that means it's correct root. So 36 minus 18, it's 18. 18 equal to 18. Okay, that's the correct answer. So x equal to 6. That's the first root. I checked it in. It's correct. Okay, what is the other one? Negative 3. Okay, now let's substitute negative 3. So x squared, if x is negative 3, would be 9 minus 3 times negative 3 must be equal to 18. If it doesn't equate to 18, that means there is something wrong. Okay, 9 plus 9 equal to 18. That means correct. So the two solutions which you found from the two different methods, 6 and negative 3, are the correct solutions or the correct roots. Okay, next question here. That's an easy one. That would be y squared minus 49. It's equal to 0. So here it's quadratic again because the biggest power is 2. But as you can see, the term with power 1, y is missing. Okay, so here if I want to identify a, b, c, a is 1, b is 0, c is negative 49. So you can use any method. Again, I'm going to use the two different methods. First of all would be using the formula. So y 1 and 2, I'm always expecting two roots because it's a quadratic. So negative b, that would be 0, plus and minus b squared would be 0 minus 4 times negative 49 times 1 over 2 times a, which would be 2. So this one would be 196, which equals to 14 divided by 2. So you would have one root to be 7, one root to be negative 7, right? This is factorization. This is the quadratic formula. Now let's method 1. Okay, method 1. Now I'm going to use method 2. So method 2 here is factorization. If you take a look at this one, it's one of your famous identity. It's the difference of squares. So you can just expand it like this, factorize it like this. Again, two brackets multiply to one another equal to 0. So any of these is a potential answer. From the first one, the answer, the root is plus 7. From the second one, the root is negative 7. So if you take a look at closely, again, the two roots you get from the two different methods are exactly the same. Okay, so plus 7, negative 7, negative 7. I'm not going to test the answers. I leave it to you guys to test the answers. I'm going to use the rest of the time to do more practice questions. Before proceeding to the next type of questions, I just want to do a recap for you on the quadratic formula. And, Um, so let's do a recap. Remember, guys, what we discussed in the class. So this is your quadratic equation, right? Ax squared plus bx plus c. And if you want to solve this one by using quadratic formula, you have to substitute everything in this one. B squared minus 4 times ac over 2a. And this part of the equation, which is under, the square root part of the equation, it's called the discriminant, right? Which means it should be positive. Screaming. It should be positive so you can have an answer. If it's negative, if the discriminant is negative, then you wouldn't have any real solution. And if the discriminant is equal to 0, you would get two identical roots. So based on the discriminant, sometimes we show the discriminant with a triangle. Based on the discriminant value, you would have three different situations. When the discriminant is greater than 0, you would have two different real roots. Remember, we are talking about real roots, okay? So you would have two different real roots. If it's equal to 0, you would still have two real roots, but remember, guys, it wouldn't be different. It would be two identical, right? Two identical real roots. And the third situation, it's when the determinant it's less than 0. When it's less than 0, you would have no real roots. Okay? And just to recap, the discriminant it's b squared minus 4 times ac. Based on the value of this discriminant, you would have three different situations. You would either have two different real roots, or if it's equal to 0, you would have two identical real roots, or when it's less than 0, you would have no real roots. So the next type of question you will get usually in the test is they give you a question, a quadratic equation, and they tell you to use the quadratic discriminant to determine the nature of the roots. They don't want you to actually calculate the exact value of the roots. They want you to find the nature. Will you get two different roots, two identical roots, or no real roots? Okay, so let's do a few examples. The first example we're gonna have is 4x squared plus 2x minus 5. Okay, this is the first one. So here we have to start with identifying A, B, C again. A being 4, B 2, C negative 5. But instead of using the whole formula, we just focus on the discriminant, right? And see what's the value. Is it greater than 0? Is it 0? Or is it less than 0? So b squared is 4 times minus 4, b squared minus is 4 minus 4 times a c. And let's see what's the answer. So it's 4 minus, okay, 4 times negative 5, it's negative 20. Negative 20 times negative 4, it's plus 80. Okay, so your discriminant is greater than 0. That means you have two different roots. That means if you solve this equation and find the exact value of the roots, you will get two real roots which the values are not the same. Now let's do another question. 9x squared minus 6x plus 1 equal to 0. This is another example. In here again, we start by identifying A, B, C. Then we find the value of the discriminant only, because the question is not asking us about the values of the roots. It's only asking about the nature of the root. I'm just repeating again and again so that you will get familiar with the methods, with the terminology, with different type of questions. Okay, so here again, b squared minus 4 times ac, substitute it. So 36 minus 4 times ac, that is 36 minus 36 equal to 0. So here your determinant is equal to 0. That is situation number 2, when the determinant is equal to 0, you would have two identical real roots, right? So again, you have two roots, but they are identical. And what does it mean? That means if you try to solve this thing, okay, whatever roots you get, it would be identical. Okay, I prefer to solve this thing and find the roots and show you. Okay, so here I start by factorizing. Okay, so the first term is a perfect square. I just do the square root, which is 3x, 3x. Okay, so now I'm looking for two numbers added together multiplied by the repeating term equals to negative 6x. So m plus n must be equal to negative 2. The same two terms multiplied together are plus 1. So it should be negative 1 and negative 1, right? So if I want to rewrite it, this is how it's factorized. And from here, 3x minus 1, 3x minus 1, because it's repeating twice, right? It's a potential answer, and the roots you get, it's 1/3, right? No matter what bracket you use, the answer, it's the same. So you get two roots, but as you can see here, it's the identical amount. Let's move on to the other question. Here we are given like a quadratic equation, but the thing is here you can see that it's not written in the order from the biggest power to the lowest power, and it's on both sides. So first of all, we move everything to one side, and I try to do all the steps in one go. So that would be negative 10n plus 21. So A is 1, B is negative 10, C is 21. And remember, this is the discriminant. So B squared is 100 minus 4 times AC. A is 1, C is 21. 100 minus 84. 100 minus 84, which is 16. So your discriminant, it's greater than 0, which means you will have two real roots. Okay, the next question. Here I have another quadratic. Let's start with identifying A, B, C. Okay, so again, I write the discriminant formula. B squared would be 100 minus 4 times A is 5, C is 26. Okay, so 100 minus 4 times 5 is 20. Oh, here it's 100 minus 520. So the discriminant value, it's negative 420. I want you to pay attention to this negative value. So your discriminant is less than 0. Remember, guys, if it's less than 0, Okay, I'm gonna bring back my other notes. If it's less than 0, that means there are no real roots. You just report that the discriminant is less than 0, so there are no real roots. I hope this one helps you with your test today, especially the second part. I'll try to post another video on quadratic function so you can watch that before the test. See ya.